welcome to BTV. We're doing a very special program tonight all about queer parenting. I'm your host for this evening, Malice Black, and I'm joined by the very lovely David Johnson-Bell and Remy Sholton and Dr. Jen Power. Now, David, you are a parent of a daughter with another gay man?
Another gay man, my partner, so Catherine's 4 years old.
Okay, beautiful. And Jen, you have a son who's 3?
Yes.
And also your research area is?
Same-sex parenting, among other things, yes.
Excellent. And Remy, you also have children.
Yeah, I've got a couple of boys, and so I'm a donor dad, so, we'll get into more of that. But I've got a 4-year-old and I'm just over a 1-year-old.
Excellent. And I have 2 boys, 2 young boys. So we'll be talking about the details in a minute. But we first sort of wanted to start off with talking about the method of how we got our children. So, David, I think I'd like to start with you.
Yep. So we did a surrogacy through the US for our first one, and we're doing a surrogacy through India for our second one. And so the second one is born or due in January?
Yeah, right.
Mid-January.
So,
Go.
I was going to ask, did you have to get an egg donor and a surrogate separately?
Yep, both situations. So with the egg donor, it's interesting because you get this, it's almost like a women's underwear catalogue. You just he's flicking through these people and it's like, oh, that'll do.
Wow.
So what?
So I got banned from picking her. Jason took over from that point
Because you were just going whatever.
Yeah, whatever. That she looks
So
pretty enough.
Jason had high standards, is what you say?
He had more patience to go through.
And what about future contact? That's just not on the cards? Is it
In theory, I can't recall now, but I think we said if there is future contact, we would like to. But the problem is that, it could be 18 years later and people's addresses change and things like this. So everyone says, available for future contact, but then they move and you've got no real forwarding address. But, I don't see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So
Really?
were you like, was there a specific thing that you were looking for in your designer baby? Like, was it like she needs to be intelligent or she needs to be sporty or she needs to be gorgeous or?
No, not really. No. I mean, when we were picking the egg donor, I was looking for things like what's the educational levels and things like this, but then you pay more for those ones. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, okay.
Really? The high-quality egg donors?
If they've got a doctorate degree, you pay more than if they've got a master's degree, which is more than a bachelor's degree, which is more than a high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
But beyond that, it was mostly actually the health of the woman, genetics and things like this. Nothing too major. That was my main
quite
criteria.
different to just having a baby with someone, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, like I did. But yes, we won't talk about that just yet. Jen, let's talk about you.
So I was in a same-sex relationship at the time and conceived using the proverbial turkey baster. It's not actually a turkey baster. We use a syringe and a cup.
Yeah.
Which I can't imagine how a turkey baster would actually work.
That's why you don't use a turkey baster.
Was it a really long syringe though? Was it like a
No, it was I think it's a 10 mil.
So you did
so
like
it's
a really forceful squirt. Is that what happens?
No, you want to do a gentle squirt because you don't want to damage the sperm. So I did a bit of Google research before we did it.
Yeah. And so worked first time, did it?
No, it took about 4 goes.
Okay.
All up.
And so how did you get your donor?
I advertised. It was actually quite funny. I was studying at the time and I was procrastinating one day and Googling around and I came across, it's not there anymore, but the, what's it called? I think the Pink Pages or something had a parenting section, and it's a pity it's not there because it was really good if anyone who's attached to that is watching. And my partner at the time was Filipino, so I just put an ad on saying any Filipino guys out there interested in being a donor. And thinking, what are my chances? I got a response within 2 hours.
Wow.
And he was fantastic. And it was just perfect. We had really similar ideas about, his role and our roles and the relationship that he would have with the kid. And he was really easygoing. He was probably a high quality, had a couple of postgraduate degrees.
All right, expensive.
Yet I didn't pay him. So I feel like it was a bit meant to be and really lucky with him. He was in a different state, so I had to fly there for the sperm handover.
So does he, do your kids see him or?
Yeah. Yep. So we see him probably not as often as maybe I'd like, and I think as my son gets older it'll have to be more often because he's he'll start to facilitate that, I guess, as he gets a bit older. But at the moment, I guess every 1 or 2 months he visits. Or
wow, that's cool.
That's quite frequent.
Yeah. And they Skype, so my son, who's 3 now,
Yeah, cool.
It's good on Skype, kids these days.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Okay, so Remy, your story?
I guess I'm the flip side of Jen in that I am a donor. And I didn't actually answer an ad. I actually have friends who are a couple, and they sort of approached me and said, would you want to donate? So we actually talked about it for about 2 years, because I didn't want to go into that lightly. And so we kind of worked it out that we were all eventually on the same page, and we had sort of some rules and guidelines sort of down. And of course they're all out the window now. And then we went ahead, and so we did the first one, and there was always going to be, I wanted to call the second baby sequel. Did not go down well. So there was always option on the second one. And then, because originally it was going to be each mother or each woman was going to be the carrier for one, so that we'd have a sort of a tighter biological circle. Things didn't work out that way, but that was the original plan.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit about the actual sperm handover for you guys.
Well, hang on, what's your story?
Quickly, I thought I was straight, and I had a baby with a man, and then I discovered I was bi. So, that's sort of, I did it the old-fashioned way, Yeah.
By accident.
Having sex thing. Actually, we planned ours.
At the back seat of the car?
No, we actually planned ours, and I actually said, okay, so I want to have mine by this stage, or before 30. We're going to have it. We're going to do it. And then, unfortunately, so I had two. I had two with the same man, and then the bi started creeping in, and so we are obviously no longer together. But so I have a different kind of, and I'm actually with a man at the moment, so it's quite different for me when I walk down the street, but we'll talk about that a bit later. So I was interested, the sperm, the actual...
How does it all happen?
Yeah.
Well, I sort of have made this into a little bit of a story of mine, which is that everyone has housemates, and everybody knows that probably someone in the house is masturbating. But to specifically go over to someone's house to have a wank into a receptacle, and can I say, turkey baster, I'm a large man, but no, turkey baster is huge, and when it happens, you just go, is that it? Is that it?
Yeah.
And actually,
it's not as much as you think.
No. And by the second one, I was actually losing faith, and I was kind of going, I think maybe I should pull out of this, because it's not. But then I got the phone call, and it had all happened anyway, even though I was like, so but you don't actually get very much of it. So and then so I didn't want to sort of say like, oh, I'm ready, so I would start singing jazz, and so the girls knew at that stage that it was time for them to sort of come out. But they were sweet. They bought me like a porn DVD.
Nice. Did they get the right kind?
Yes, they did.
Oh, wow, good.
Secondhand. And then I took the receptacle, and what's the name of it?
I called it a cup.
The sperm cup.
It's not like your coffee cup. But anyway, so then I would put it in my armpit to make sure that it all stayed at body temperature and was right. I would do the handover. At that stage, the girls would go into their room, and girl number one had already sort of gone in, was getting in the right position, hips up, that kind of thing. Wow. And then it was time for me to go and feel cheap on the way home.
Okay, wow, okay. Some interesting stories that we're getting through here, and we're going to continue with them after the break. Welcome back to BTV. We're talking all things queer parenting. And before the break, we were talking about the sperm donor how-to, and Jen's going to fill us in on her spermy business.
Well, just following on from Remy's home job, as we're calling it. So mine was interesting because I was staying in a hotel, which was across the road from where the donor lived. So he'd do the deed, fill the cup, and text me when he was done. Really? And we'd meet in the foyer. Well, we met. He'd come across the road. We'd meet in the foyer of the hotel, and it was so bizarre. I just remember feeling like we were doing something illicit. Like, it was a drug deal handover, and I was imagining what would happen if someone asked us, what's going on here? What are you handing
stopped by the police. Show me what's in your bag. Okay.
But he did the same thing. He wrapped it up and kept it warm and ran over. And it's just surreal. I mean, you're doing such a weird thing, yet you kind of just have to go with the flow and.
Go with it when it happens. And so, David, tell us about your experience.
So, yes, we went to a clinic in Los Angeles, and you just sort of go into a room, and you pick a DVD, and 5 minutes later you come out with a little vial and you hand it over. And
so, talking of the porn, did they have the right kind of DVD, or...?
I think so, yeah. Actually, apparently, they tend to go missing in this clinic.
The good stuff, all right,
I'm sure you're paying for that somehow.
I'm sure I am, but the second one was in India, and that's a bit different, because there's no DVD, no TV. It's just a walk into this room which had like a hospital bed. I'm thinking, well, this is interesting. I'm not quite sure I'm comfortable about this.
Wow.
And then you sort of walk out a few minutes later, and so everyone's just standing around. You're thinking, here I'm walking over this vial of white stuff, and sort of put it onto the counter. It's like, hello, I'm finished. These people are just sitting there, and I'm thinking, well, I suppose everyone else is here for exactly the same reason, but you do feel a bit weird.
And so we were talking in the break. How did you decide? You both gave a donation, didn't you?
We both gave a donation, and then it was just potluck who became the father in that sense.
Yeah,
two embryos were implanted and one took, and that became the father.
Yeah, okay. And so we were talking about birth certificates, because you said you had to get a paternity test?
Yeah, so under the way that works, you have to get a paternity test done to establish a biological link, and then you go to court and get a court order. And then in our case, the court order removed the surrogate's name from the birth certificate and put my partner's name as
So you
father.
have two fathers on the birth?
Just one.
Just one.
Depends in the US, it depends on the state that you're in. Some states you can have two fathers on the birth certificate. I think California.
Okay.
Yeah.
And other states, they just swap out one of the names.
So only a father listed, no mother?
Correct.
Interesting.
Correct, just the father.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Well, I'm listed as donor.
Yeah, right.
My name's not on there, it's just donor, I think.
You're on there's a donor register in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Well, I guess. I mean, the girls kind of took care of the bureaucratics, the bureaucracy. Yeah, so I'm not actually on. I don't think I'm on the birth certificate.
No.
Okay, so Jen, what about yours?
So he's got two mothers, my son, on his birth certificate.
Cool.
So the laws actually changed after he was born. So initially it was just my name, and then you could do it retrospectively.
Because
but the donor has to go on a donor register list, because the laws here say that kids have a right to know their to meet their father when they're 18.
Yeah.
And so if you go through a clinic and it's an anonymous donor, they'll register it for you. But if you do it at home, you have to register the donor.
Okay, well, I guess I must be on a register, but because when we conceived, we were actually illegal, I think, when we were doing it in Victoria, because...
Oh, yes, I think that's right.
Yeah, because we're outlaws.
Yeah.
Criminals.
Because it wasn't legalised till...
Well, it changed in 2000. It was changed in 2008 and came into effect in 2009.
Yeah.
Yes, that
So
would
we
have
were
been
breaking the
quite
law.
illegal. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got one cooking, I guess.
Yeah, another on the way.
Yeah, I suppose you want to call it, yes.
So what kind of contact do you have with the surrogate?
Very little to none. I mean, we had very little contact with the surrogate in America as well. To be honest, that's how I prefer it in some senses. It just makes it a bit easier.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I have to admit, I did find it fascinating seeing, the mum kind of pregnant and what she was going through and all that sort of stuff. You don't have that at all. You just get
Get
the
a
baby.
present. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, and they won't fit an exit to you, so you have to go over and pick it up.
Oh, because your first
Sort of
child
like
was
adoption.
premature, and so
Yeah.
you would just visit the hospital. And so there must have been one day when they said, "Okay, you can take your child."
Basically,
home.
yeah. I mean, by that stage, obviously, the court orders had been done, and so you have to have all the paperwork lined up.
Okay.
You just can't walk out of the hospital with
With
the
the
baby.
baby, yeah.
But also because she was premature, then it was also up to the hospital when they were going to release her as well.
Yeah,
and they
right.
released her, I think, 5 weeks. She was 4 weeks in ICU, and then 1 week in whatever the next level down was.
Okay, cool. So I guess we were going to talk about, what made you decide to want to be a parent, I guess. So maybe, Jen, we could start with you. What kind of happened that meant that you wanted to be a mum?
It's really funny, because when I was in my early 20s, I don't think I really thought that I would have kids.
Yeah.
And I
Me
hit about
too.
28,
Yeah.
I think, and
Yeah.
the biological clock
That's
just starts
crazy,
to
isn't
slam
it?
you. It's
Yeah.
bizarre. And people had told me that would happen, and
It never happened to me, right?
never happened to me.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of that niggle that grows, I guess, over time. And I wanted to have one before I turned 35.
Yeah.
And it just sort of happened. I have to be honest, I didn't spend a lot of time angsting over it or thinking about it, or my partner at the time and I didn't enter into long discussions. It kind of
Just happened.
Yeah.
It kind of just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably
As much
the
as it
easiest
can
way.
just happen when you're not
Yes.
just having
Yeah.
sex in the
like
back
you
of a
said,
car.
exactly. And like you said, you were just, Googling one day.
Yeah, I didn't expect
Yeah.
the donor thing would happen so easily. So I feel lucky in that
Yeah.
way.
So, David, you guys obviously the opposite, because
Yeah,
you had
so
to do a whole rigmarole.
certainly when I was in my 20s, I didn't think anything about children. Like, no way, not going to do that.
I think we're all the
and
same
then,
there.
I don't know, you just get a bit older, and there is actually a male biological clock as well.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
And so it just started ticking, and we thought about it, and that's when I think it was Lee and Tony were on the SBS program.
Okay.
So this is what, 2002, 2003, I think, 10 years ago. And so from there, it just gave some options and ideas. I thought, oh, okay.
Yeah,
And just
cool.
took it from there.
Excellent. And Remy, of course, it wasn't really your decision. Well, eventually, but your friends were
yeah, but I mean, it was my decision because we talked about it for 2 years. But I mean, even that being said, like you said, you didn't do a lot of planning. But the thing is, a lot of the planning that we did really did kind of go out the window because life happens.
Yeah.
What the advantage for me personally, I guess, was having talked about it is that we learned how to talk to each other about stuff, and I think that's one of the things that for me was very important, learning how to have those conversations about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, which you need when you're going to be a parent, basically.
Yeah.
You've got to do a lot of talking.
I think that's so true, though.
Yeah.
Like the plans that you make, no one knows how it's going to be when you have a kid, and you hear a lot of donor relationships that really go nasty once the baby's born. But if you've gone through a process where you've learned to communicate, I think that's all you can do.
Yeah, and
nothing can be set in stone.
Yeah, and you do get a lot of like horror stories. You know, people love to. I guess human beings to a certain extent. Oh, did you hear? It was terrible. You know, but when you read it, there are some really positive stories.
Oh, there are great stories.
And one of the big things for me as well was I went to I don't know if it's a support group, but I went to see some kids of queer parents, and they were doing a talk and all this sort of stuff, and I just was so impressed with them, and they just seemed so normalised and kind of normal, smart kids, and I was just like, great. And I guess I also like the idea of the extended family, like a village. It's not just mum and dad, it's like everyone gets involved.
No, that's what we need in our culture, more extended families, I think, and obviously different types of queer families, straight families, etc. But I'm sure we'll talk more about that after the break. Stay with us. Hi, you're back on BTV and we're talking queer parenting, co-parenting. What exactly is involved there?
So I guess that's one of the other examples. I've got a lesbian couple who are friends of mine in Sydney, and so they also have a donor, but he's not a donor in that like I see the boys, once every 3 weeks, etc. Whereas he actually takes the boys for like about half the time, really.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of like being born into a separated couple.
Yeah.
So they spend half the time with Lisa and Maggie and half the time with Robin and his partner at the time. I think they're not together anymore. But that's what I mean with that idea of like they've got 4 parents. Even though they're separated, or 2 of them are now, and then it just get more and more. But so that's it. And then Robin also gets involved with the financial side of things.
Wow, so I think that would be a lot of hard work, I think.
So it's sort of time, decision making and finances that...
Yeah, well, I mean, I obviously have an ex, and so we do co-parenting in a different sense, as do you, Jen. And it's difficult, right? So and you say you don't actually have that much to do with the decision, kind of.
No, so I don't take financial responsibility. But the double-edged sort of that is that I don't I can't say not Catholic school.
And you couldn't name the baby sequel.
I wasn't allowed to call it.
But having said that, I was with someone I wanted to call our firstborn dude. And he wouldn't have it, okay?
I wonder why.
I know. But Jen, let's talk a little bit about your research, some of the things that you've looked at in terms of reactions.
Yeah, so we've done, we're doing various things, but one of the projects I work on is one where we've surveyed about 500 same-sex attracted parents in Australia and New Zealand. And we looked at lots of things. We didn't want to do another study on the kids okay. So we looked a lot at family processes, so how families are coping, and a lot about how they kind of interact with mainstream world, so mainstream services with their local communities and with the gay and lesbian community.
Yeah, okay.
And with their families and mainstream families. So we asked a lot of questions about support from families, that sort of thing. And it's interesting, like a lot of people spoke about becoming much closer to their families of origin when they had kids. You know, kids kind of draw you back to your parents.
They do a bit.
Did you find that with your parents?
I found that with my parents, Jason's parents as well. Even just my brothers as well. So it's just you just sort of tied in a bit more.
Everybody loves a baby.
People love a baby, and it gives common ground. You know, parents that maybe, and this is being very general, but maybe parents that weren't so comfortable with their kid being gay or lesbian suddenly see, oh,
Got
look,
a new baby that might be strange.
look, they're a normal family. Or, you know, they do the things that we do, and it's kind of comfortable ground for them to re-engage, and it's, you know, not for everyone. There's obviously stories of families that have not been able to cope, but on the whole, it was a good thing when babies came in.
Yeah, so, and talking about, like, public reaction, have you sort of experienced any kind of backlash or anything?
No. I mean, Jason's mother wasn't overly impressed at the start. She thought it was a daft idea, and Jason's grandmother thought it was a completely daft idea.
Oh, really?
But now that Catherine's come along, Jason's mother's had a change of heart, let's say.
Yeah.
But, you know, work colleagues, they don't even bat an eyelid.
Yeah.
You know, so, okay. I think it's because most of them got the children themselves, and so they don't see anything. They don't see anything other than it's just a father with a child, and then it's all the diseases that you get, and you have to take time off and things like this.
So what about, say, the walking down the street kind of action? Do you get any kind of looks? No. And what in the research, should anyone report any
Very
kind
little.
of negative
I mean,
stuff?
We asked about instances of bullying or discrimination that they'd experienced, or the kids had experienced in various settings. School obviously was the most common, and that was again most common in regional rural areas and more common in outer suburbs. But overall the instances were very low. You know, kind of 5% had experienced some sort of discrimination, but on the whole, no. I mean, discrimination's different to sometimes feeling awkward or disconnected or out of things, I guess. So we asked it in a very particular way, but overt instances were very low.
I mean, we found that, like childcare, for instance, they don't ask very awkward questions. They just accept the situation. I think because they accept the situation, then all the other parents, whatever their personal thoughts are, they haven't told us, and so we haven't picked anything up like that at all. So if they do object. They certainly don't tell anyone about it.
If anything, and this is on a very small scale, because so I get very positive reactions from, let's say, straight women that I tell, and they're like, as if I've done some noble thing, you know, as opposed to into a cup. But yeah, very positive, very like, oh, that's great that you're doing that, and it's so good of you to make that commitment. But then there's a very small percentage where you kind of feel like you're belittled in that, like, isn't it cute that you're doing that? And you just kind of go, hang on.
It's a nice little gay boy,
it's kind of, sometimes you feel a little bit marginalised, but I mean, still in a positive way, I guess, you know. So I've had very positive kind of feedback, because there are situations like, you know, with your 45-year-old Lebanese cab driver, you may not mention it.
You can choose your moments, really.
Sorry, I mean, that's not a Lebanese thing. It's just kind of, you know, So somebody from a more traditional background.
You just don't know, and you don't have to put yourself on the line because a taxi ride's only 10 minutes. You don't need to risk it all the time.
Yeah, exactly. However, though, I do find, and this is a bit terrible, but it's a great in. If they have kids, suddenly you can have a conversation.
That's true.
Whereas before I wasn't able to have some of those conversations.
Yes, because if you don't have children, you're not interested in child kind of things.
No.
Right? So,
and likewise, when you have a kid, you're in the club. Like you're in some kind of club
that
you didn't know existed before.
Yeah, that's true.
And when you're part of the club, you're allowed to diss the kids.
Yes.
It's great because everybody understands the nightmarishness of it. Whereas, like, if you're outside the club, you can't say, "Oh, children are terrible."
Oh, yeah.
You know, whereas like
lousy children.
Your little monster doing that. It's great. So you've got an in.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and just quickly before we go, what do you get called? Do you get called mummy? You don't get called mummy, do you?
I get called Daddy Remy.
Nice.
And one is mummy and one is mama.
Cool.
Same.
David?
And Daddy David, Daddy Jason.
Awesome. And I'm just Mummy Malice, in fact. Yes. So we have been having such an awesome conversation about parenting in the queer community, and I would like to thank Remy, Jen and David.
Thank you.
Don't forget, we're always here. Come back and see us again next time. Good night.